me is mellifluous Kayleen Williams. We're two authors on a journey to learn more with you, the audience, so thank you for joining us. This episode is brought to you by The Dark Between by J.N. Chaney and Terry Maggart. And we're talking about how to become more clear and concise writers by cutting our purple prose. Tonight we have two guests, both hosts on Keystroke Medium. One runs the Ask the Editor show and has edited over 250 titles, including many Amazon bestsellers. And our second guest is also an editor. He has written a number of Amazon bestsellers himself, including my personal favorite, The Buried Goddess Saga. Woo. His publishing company, Athon Books, puts out exciting new science fiction and fantasy novels every month. Ellen Campbell and Steve Bollier, welcome back to the show.
Hey, thank you.
Yay! It's so good to see you guys. And Steve, we haven't seen you in so long.
I know. Here I am. I look the same.
Like time to go to Vegas.
Most of Halloween's past now.
What have you been up to all this time?
I have been in, I think before the show, pre-show, you called it the publishing cave or something to that effect. And that has absolutely been the truth. I mean, Ellen knows you start editing and you know as well, Lauren, that you just actually all four of us, I guess, edit, right? You just get lost in these books and you think this is going to take me a couple of days. And then next thing you know,
it's February.
You're writing somebody else's book. So it's compounded when you own a publishing company, because like I'm putting it out and it's not just sort of like in the beginning of the book, it says edited by Steve Bollier or something. It's like our logo, it's our everything. And we want the authors to succeed and we want ourselves to succeed. So I'm just in a hole. I'm in this publishing hole. So, but I'm out now. I'm here with you guys. I'm excited.
It's the land of the living.
Yep.
Does that mean we get 6 more weeks of summer?
I think so. If you see my shadow.
Yeah.
But you can't see my beard apparently.
No, you look like you're wearing a fur collar.
I'm cool with that.
Like a mink collar.
I don't support fur though.
Okay.
He's wearing a faux fur.
Unless it's off the animal and on me, then it's fine.
And then it's that time of the year where everyone's trying to get their books published and get ready because a big writers' conference is coming up in 18 days.
18 days.
20 books to Vegas, and we hope to see you guys there or at one of the 20 books in the future. And today we'll kind of cut in a very super awkward segue straight over to our topic, which is Purple Prose and how to become better writers by cutting it. Some of us want to become better writers by just writing anything. But if we're writers who are writing something and we want to make those words better, one way to do that is to be more concise and clear with our language. So I heard this phrase first from you, Ellen, Purple Prose.
Oh, really?
Yeah. You brought this up on a couple of episodes we've had, and I think it's a great phrase, but some authors, we might be asking, what is that? When I first heard it, I wasn't sure what it meant. So what is Purple Prose? How does it sneak into our writing? And then later on, we'll talk about how to get it out.
Purple prose is the result of you when you over describe something, and when you describe something way too far, when you go beyond the pale in description. That's purple prose.
I call it flowery nonsense.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Fantasy writing is full of flowery nonsense that if your name is not Martin or Sanderson, you really can't get away with it anymore.
Well, a lot of people they think that, okay, well, I'm showing it. I'm not telling, I'm showing the story, and I'm setting the scene for the reader. Number one, you're doing your reader a disservice because they can set a scene in their mind and they're trying to anyway, and you're just clogging up your writing with lots of stuff that's really irrelevant, and nobody cares about the condensation beating down the drop of frosty scotch or whatever your hero is drinking, or the tawny texture of the suede draperies pulled back by the tasseled cord. Nobody cares. They really don't.
Was it super important? I mean, yeah. I mean, you definitely want to keep it concise.
Keep it lean.
You don't need 5 words for one will do, especially in a single sentence.
Also call it Robert Jordanisms.
Robert Jordan.
Pretty sure Wheel of Time is just one big mass of purple prose. He died writing the books. That should really say something. But
So Ellen, you said it comes from this drive we've got to show our readers, not tell. We don't want to just tell them what happened. We want to show them. We want to put them in the middle of the scene. We want to immerse them in our writing. So we might immerse them so much that they're kind of drowning in all of this.
No, it's not drowning because you're piling sludge on top of them and suffocating them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So how can we identify it in our writing?
Well, the first thing you want to do is don't take everything you hear as a catchphrase to heart. Show, don't tell. I mean, is all well and good, but it's not cast in stone. It's not handed down by God. It's not handed down by your editor. It's not hard and fast every single time rule.
Yeah.
There is no such thing as a hard and fast every single time. Never, ever, ever with English. There just isn't.
And
Except
Steve,
for use the apostrophe incorrectly. That's a hard and fast.
That's fair.
When you're talking about the structure of language, when you're talking about the structure of your sentences and how you phrase things and how things go together, you're never going to write it the way I write it. And I don't write it the way Kayleen writes it. And Steve writes better than all of us. So, you know, and we've all written it differently. And in none of our sentences is anything wrong, but they're different because everybody's coming with their own point of view, and that's okay.
Yeah.
So it's somewhat subjective.
It's very subjective.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And
Subject matter could change that so quickly.
And
I'm sorry,
Steve,
Oh, it's the subject matter. I mean, that could change.
Yeah. But if
How
you
you attack
if you wanted to write a description of going to the grocery store, and we all wrote one of leaving my house and going down to Kroger, they would all be different.
Well, and the other thing to consider there is that purple prose is not always just the way that you describe something. It is actually stage direction can
Stage
the
direction
category of purple prose. Like you just said, us going to the grocery store. Well, really, the reader just needs to know Steve went to the grocery store.
Right. No, we don't need
It doesn't need to be he
open.
opened his garage door and then he went to his car and he opened the car door to his blue Corolla and he sat down in the seat and he turned on the radio, but he didn't like that station. So he went to the next station. And I mean, there are books that if you would take out all of the stage direction, you would go from a 100,000 word book to a 65,000 word book. And that's not an exaggeration.
No,
Yeah, no, I mean, he turned left and looked down, through the doorway where so-and-so was standing. She turned and looked back at him and then walked toward him. I mean, it's all of that.
Generally, if I ever see with his right arm or with his left arm, I go, oh my God, who cares? What arm? Anyone? I mean, unless there's some reason for knowing that it's the right or left arm, I don't care. I don't care if your character's right-handed or left-handed. It just, none of that matters at all to the story, generally speaking. Now, there might be some times, but.
Yeah.
Now, speaking of mattering to the story. Huh?
Well, that's true, Steve. To an extent, but don't let that be your excuse to write purple prose.
Right.
I mean, are you writing torrid romance? Are you writing epic fantasy? I mean, if you are, you are, and then have at it. More power to you.
Yeah.
All right. To build on that point, Ellen, you're making, Jeffrey Haskell says genre matters. Some people liked purple prose. They liked the language to look pretty. So how might that look in different genres? And Steve, I know you can add on to this because you're a fantasy writer.
Well, epic fantasy is one of the areas where you can be excused for this. Now, I'll be honest with you. I love fantasy. I don't want a 400,000 word book where most of it is. I mean, Robert Jordan. I jokingly say this, but like he tells you every flower that the characters pass in the woods, and it's just like at some point. I want the characters and the story to move forward more than I want to know what the woods around them look like. But Haskell's right. Like some people really dig that, really love that. I'm not one of them. If you read any of my fantasy books, it's colloquial, it's quick. I just want you to know the characters and learn the story. And sometimes that fails me because people say, well, I don't know how big the world is. Well, I'm like, well, then look at the damn map. I don't know what you want from me. That's the best way. Like, I don't want you to feel like you're traveling for 3 weeks with my companions to get from one city to the next. So no, we're not going to eat 37 meals. We're not going to sleep 4 times. We're not going to do all of those things just so you feel the scope of the world. But some epic fantasy readers want all of that. And that's just not me.
And exactly what you're saying, a lot of it has to do with you as an author. What is your voice? What are the things that you find important in your story? If it's really setting that scene and, being in that forest and knowing that they're glowing and they're purple and the trees sometimes move of their own accord, if that's important.
Trees moving of their own accord is an important detail, but does anybody care if it's lavender or purple?
Right.
But if
you're making excuses for,
but if it's not like every other sentence, you're like the purple flowers, the purple flowers. Fuck the purple flowers. You said it already.
Exactly.
Rick says
purple flowers are a character. We're tired of hearing about them.
Rick said it worked for Tolkien. So, and then of course Bard of Today said no, it didn't. But it did, and we also have to remember, as modern writers, we've got to remember that the guys who started this thing, we're not those guys. I am not the Beatles. The stuff that worked for the Beatles will not work today in music, right? It won't. It just won't happen. Why? Because there's innovators, and then there's those who carry the torch. And Tolkien, if I wrote like Tolkien today, the dude took like 80 years to write that series. He crafted like 4 languages to do that. Meanwhile, we're trying to put out a book every 30 days. Like, we're not in the same realm here. And so did it work for Tolkien? Maybe it worked for Tolkien, but like, it was like one of the first real epic fantasies. And I'm not going to compare myself to him and try to do things like him, because I don't think it'll work today.
Well, it's kind of like, Shakespeare. Let's just take Shakespeare. What dost thou comprehend? If you're going to write something like that. But of course, that was back then. That's what they had. They, described all of that deep stuff in that type of language. Throw that out there today, it might not work.
Yeah.
You're going to have to tweak it a little bit if you want to get that flavor. But then again, it's all different flavors. What flavor are you going for? Just make it strong.
There's a happy medium. There is a beautiful place that you could find in between. I mean, I've said this before on KSM. I read a lot of indie books where I go, I wish I knew more about what the heck just happened, because it happened so quickly that now I'm lost. Not just indie books, but even Hunger Games. Forgive me if I'm going to ruin this book for somebody who's been living under a rock.
Spoiler alert.
When Prim died, I got a chapter later and they mentioned Prim having died, and I went back. I'm like, when did Prim die?
Yes.
And it was like literally 2 sentences to take a character that was an integral part of the story, and it was like the driving force for Katniss's like intense emotions at the end. And I'm like, when did she even die?
What you're describing is something that I describe as fast and slow parts. You need to zoom over, like the walking, the talking, the colors, but when it's those impact moments, that's when you want to slow it down. You want to take those 30 seconds, it again, subjectively, those 30 seconds, and give the reader time to digest it. That's when you can add in a little bit more of that flowery nonsense and weave it in there. And then once that's done, you get it moving again, get the reader breathing again, and like, oh my God, I can't believe that just happened. What the heck's going to happen next? But yeah, I agree.
And just one more little tiny thing that people need to be aware of while we're on this topic: beware of the info dump in the middle of a dialogue. I mean, why are you doing that? Why now I have to go back 2 paragraphs to find out what she's answering the question, but I don't remember what the question is anymore.
Or in the middle of action. I mean, if your characters are running and we're in a moment where we're trying to get away from some kind of antagonist, whatever it is, friggin' giant robot trashing through the city, and suddenly I'm in a page and a half of why the city is in ruins, or whatever it is. I'm like, well, I'm not even in this anymore. Why
she was running in the first place, and did she really, whatever, yeah.
Or like her COPD is acting up in the middle of the whole thing, and she can't breathe, and like, just give me what's going on more than like the feelings. We just need to get to the action, and then we can talk about the feelings, I think, afterwards.
Here's a writer process question. Are we cutting our purple prose as we're writing our draft, or are we writing our draft, getting it out, and then going back later during the revision stage and then cutting it out?
I always cut them after. I don't, because if I try to cut them as I'm writing, especially that first draft, then I get stuck. I lose the flow. But the more you write, the more you're aware of what those important bits are, the easier it is to write without them, if that makes sense.
I think that's a great answer. And not to say, I mean, how do I say this? After a million words, you know when you're purple prosing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like at this point, as soon as I start describing something and I go, who freaking cares? I'm done. I'm done writing that. And we've talked about discovery writing and onion writing before in the past on this show. That helps a lot too, is if you're just writing kind of that bare bones outline feel of what you're doing, and then you go back and write into what you've done. If that's a way that you can write, that helps me a lot because I'm not dumping out all the descriptions all at once. I'm able to go back through and go, okay, do they need to know what this room looks like? Do they need to know what this guy's wearing? I read a book the other day or a few days ago where every character that ever walked on screen, I learned what they were wearing. Mm-hmm. In detail. I mean, like to the ring. And I'm like, oh my goodness, unless this plays a role in this story, I don't care what they're wearing.
That is a great comment, unless it plays a role. So one of the things in my writing that I specifically like to do is quickly touch on, and it really depends on what the story is about. So I'm going to use one I've already written. My C481 story. Yeah, I open it up describing the snowfall, but how that's impacting the character. If it's not impacting the character, then I wouldn't have written it. Mm-hmm. He's shivering in it. It's ticking him off. He just wants to get to work and solve this problem. And the snow isn't making it any better. And that was my way directly into his head for the reader to see what his personality and the way he sort of reacts to things. So do they need to know how cold it is, how it stings and builds up on his beard? No, but do they need to know in his mind how that's affecting his current state of mind? Yes. And so I was able to wrap that in that way. So I did it purposefully.
Yeah.
If you have a purpose for it, then, that's a totally different situation, but yeah.
It just hurts more when your editor says, this is terrible, cut it out.
Right. Like I tried so hard.
And for me, it's a writing partner, my business partner, who I go through these, things that I've toiled over, and he's like, redundant.
Yeah.
Redundant. I'm like, you a-hole. I worked hard on that. But it's always right. Listen, your editor is almost always right. Like, unless they're a bad editor, your editor's almost always right because they're also a reader. And they're reading your book. And if they're bored, I think Chuck said it, if you're bored, your editor's going to be bored. And if you're bored, yeah, there it is. The reader is going to be bored out of their minds.
So the answer is it kind of depends on the writer about when you cut the purple prose. For me personally, since I'm starting from an editor's background, if I'm editing myself while I'm trying to write, I'll never get anywhere. It's going to be an excruciating sentence at a time. So sometimes just releasing the description and releasing the verbs and whatever it takes and just kind of getting stuff out, I can go back and change it later. But at least I've gotten it down on the Word document. And I do use Word, not Scrivener.
So Luke,
with this thought, okay, purple prose is like dog poop. It has to happen, but you're responsible for cleaning it up. Don't inflict that on somebody else.
It's good. Bard of today, Luke. I'm not sure if we're allowed to say his real name. It's really weird to say Bard of today. Luke asked, how do we tell the difference between where is it? It's a purple prose, difference between purple prose and giving the reader a feel for the environment or the physical sensations. It's the difference between he walked into the room and the smell that overwhelmed him. I mean, I'm not writing right now, but the smell that overwhelmed him was of dead animal. There you've got that. The smell of dead animal assaulted his senses. We're done. Yep. We're done. We've got it. Now write it better than that. But
I was about to call you on being purple.
Yeah, I mean, write it better than that. But come on, it smelled like dead animal in the room. That's it. That's all you need. And I don't need to know that it's permeating the 1970s wallpaper unless we're really trying to sell that this is a 1970s feel. The person that lived there is old fashioned. The person that lives there might not have a phone, like whatever it is, you know?
But it has a purpose.
Right. If you're just walking down the street and your character's walking down the street and it smells like dead animal, just tell them it smells like dead animal.
It doesn't need to, burn the nostrils and choking down his throat and makes him cough, and the person beside him scrambles away, and I don't know. But unless that has something to do with what's going to happen next.
I mean, if you were describing this room behind you, you'd tell the character would walk in and he'd say, the guy was obviously a collector. He had things all over his room. We're done right there. You don't need to describe everything that I collected or everything that you see. And a lot of writers tend to describe everything that they see in the room. And it feels like we have a lot of nerds here. Here's where we go. When it feels like your DM in a Dungeons and Dragons game is telling you what you see around you, you have overwritten that scene.
Yeah. A good way for Steve's little office there. He sat amongst many shelves of books and figurines.
Done.
Boom. Move on.
In the corner of the room, there was an armoire made of mahogany. It was brown, like the color of her hair.
The moonlight glistened upon its soft finish, and you could just barely see the scuff marks of where his fingers often opened that right door.
Well, in a little bit, we have some actual examples of Purple Prose from
beautiful
works.
Yeah, we stopped making them up.
Readers, but we have a comment from a Facebook user. Don't you think that keeping the prose a little on the sparse side engages the reader's imagination more?
Mine.
That always made me connect with the story. Ellen?
Larry Niven said one time to me, me in a room full of other people, that you do.
He said it to me and about 900 other people, but whatever. I was there.
To me.
You do your reader a disservice if you think that they can't imagine a space battle. You don't have to tell them which laser went which way. You don't have to tell them which ship did what or this or that or what. Tell them the battle raged. Boom, you're done.
Can
and
I
the
interject?
fun part is we all have a different imagining of what that battle looks like.
But we all have one.
But we all have the core of what's happening within what we're imagining. That's the amazing part.
Can I tell you why I think
what I loved was his statement, you do your reader a disservice.
That's right.
Yes. So the answer is yes.
Today's writer, qualifier, Ellen said that she's edited over 250 books.
She's a beast.
250 titles. Not all of them were book length.
Okay. I mean, so put me somewhere about 100. Okay. I don't know about Kayleen and Lauren, but like between us, we've got at least 500 books, I would say, or 500 pieces that are under our belts. Many of the ones I've done have been indie. I should say all of them have been indie because I've not done any real trad work, but a lot of them have been from my publisher. What I find is that when people over-describe, it's because they're at a lack for words.
The idea factory is shut down. They don't know.
And like I need X amount of words so that this, I've got to get 2,000 words for my day, so I pump out a lot of bull crap and I forget to go back and clean it up. We've gotten so caught up in word count. Josh and I have talked about this a ton of times. We just get so caught up in I've got to hit my word count for the day that we just fill it with descriptions and we never get anywhere in our story. And then we get frustrated because we never get anywhere with our story.
He done had it done.
What was it? She had went a gun. She went had a gun.
She went and had a gun. That was
for me, it's dialogue. Like the dialogues, once they get started and they get rolling, they can keep going. And then I'm just like, writing all this dialogue. And then I'm looking at it later going, is this really helping the story move forward? I don't know. To me, though, great realistic dialogue. I will take an entire book filled with two people talking realistically to one another than anything else. I want those characters to feel like they're real human beings that are in front of me. And real human beings talk. Listen to how much we've talked about one stupid thing.
and listen to how, imagine how much attention we've paid to each other, nodding and breathing and looking and possibly messing with their screen. We're not paying attention to any of that. You don't need to tell us about it because you don't want to know, you know?
Yeah.
But if I promised someone I was writing 5,000 words today, I could write it all down.
Yeah. Look out the window, took a deep breath. And what the heck is a sharp inhale? I mean, what is that supposed to mean? That's what I'm talking about. That's a gasp. A gasp. There's a word for that in the English language. Why don't you use that word? Or don't use it at all. I mean, that's the point.
Ellen, you posted the other day. I laughed out loud on this one. How do you inhale someone through your eyes? What was the line?
Oh no, it was yeah, he inhaled her. Yeah, he was looking at her, inhaled her.
He
with
inhaled
his
her
eyes.
with her eyes.
Something like that. Yeah.
Inhaling is specific to a particular organ.
Correct.
Your
Yes.
lungs that go through your nostrils,
Right.
but.
All right, we're going to look at some actual examples, starting with one of my favorite authors, at least 10 or 20 years ago when I was a teenager, Christopher Paolini. But Kayleen, do you have a sponsor read for us?
I do indeed. All right, for you lovely folks listening, watching, as you may be. This episode is brought to you by The Dark Between, a military sci-fi epic. The Messenger, Book 2, by J.N. Chaney and Terry Maggart. I'm sorry, Terry. Anyway, scene. The messenger must prepare for war. With the archetype damaged, Dash and his crew will need more than a quick fix to prepare for what's coming. A secret facility known only as the Forge lies in cold sleep, built by the unseen for the greatest war in history. Dash has no idea what awaits him there, but he hopes to find some kind of advantage in the war that is to come. Meanwhile, on a distant world, an ancient order of monks protects a long-buried secret. They have guarded it for centuries, all in the hope that someday the messenger might come and relieve them of their task. Dash has answered that call, and he will not be denied. Of doom! That's not really in there, but I have to do it. Click the link by now.
All right, so we have our example. This is from Eldest by Christopher Paolini. Here's our Purple Prose. Sapphira? I was a fan. Oh. Sapphira's muscled sides expanded and contracted as the great bellows of her lungs forced air through her scaled nostrils. She's a dragon. Aragon thought of the raging inferno that she could now summon at will and send roaring out of her maw. It was an awesome sight when flames hot enough to melt metal rushed past her tongue and ivory teeth without harming them.
The dragon blew and breathed in and blew fire, right? I mean, is that what we got there?
That's what we
The
got.
dragon went like this.
It was a half a second in a movie that you just read.
Yep.
Yeah.
It was
Done.
so painted.
Yeah.
Now let's be fair,
Would
dude.
describe
Wasn't
her-
that dude like 16 when he wrote that?
He was. Yep, that is true. And
Best writing from a 16-year-old that got published that year.
Yes, very true. And I thought those books were a lot of fun, personally. I got these examples from a Readsy blog. The blog is called What is Purple Prose and How to Avoid It? And the article writer, she suggested rewriting this to Sapphira breathed heavily, her nostrils expelling warm air. Aragon marveled at her power. Sapphira's fiery breath could melt metal, yet she was immune to its harm.
Good.
Says the same thing, much quicker, with a lot of the flowery words just kind of cut out.
One made millions and the other didn't. I mean,
Hey, that's a good-
Yeah.
Facebook user says the dragon sharply inhaled.
Sharply inhaled. Love it.
All right, here's another one. This is from
Chuck, her skin tasted sweet to his ears. Sorry, Chuck, that was great.
The difference, I wouldn't necessarily color that example as purple, 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 because it's about a dragon, so it's probably interesting to someone.
And it's also fantasy, again, subjective.
Yeah.
But I mean, there's certainly areas where you could make it tighter, give the reader a little bit more freedom to imagine this great intake of hot, heavy, fiery, blustery air. Are we doing Bob Honey next?
Yes, Bob Honey. Now, this is a book that PBS made fun of on the NewsHour, even. It made it to PBS. Made fun of is pretty too strong. They don't want to do that. But it's by Sean Penn. It was his debut novel.
Oh, gosh. Oh, my Lord.
It made it to PBS.
Steve's reaction.
This is some of the worst writing I've ever seen in my whole life. Please do it.
Okay. Here we go.
Good luck.
There is pride to be had where I can't even say that word. There is pride to be had where the prejudicial is practiced with precision in the trenchant triage of tactical terminations. This came to him via the crucible forged fact that all humans are themselves animal, and that rifle-ready human hunters are alternately species, prey, should best aware the raging ricochet that soon will come the way. I have no idea what I just read. I'm sorry.
Here's what it was Sean Penn got a thesaurus that day.
This came to him via the crucible forged fact that all humans are themselves animal, and that rifle-ready human hunters of alternately species prey should best beware the raging ricochet that soon will come their way. Whew, okay, I got it. Found it.
So basically he's saying, you're rubber, I'm glue, it bounces off me and sticks to you, or whatever. I think I got that backwards, but yeah.
There's so many verbiage going on. Like you can't even, I'm not sure what's happening.
What's it called? An alliteration where it's the same letter back to back. Clearly he was trying to play a game there, but anything that makes your reader stop and do what Kayleen just did is absolutely the worst thing that you could do in writing. We don't know what was said, and it's not helpful. He wrote some sex scene, if I'm not mistaken. I think it was him also. And man, the descriptors there made me cringe.
That's not a good thing to cringe at.
No.
Yeah, so I mean, definitely on here we have problem, very difficult to decipher. Solution, use simpler words and clarify the references, because there's a lot of things that are happening in here that have absolutely no connection to anything or what comes before and what comes after. So the revised passage, we can take pride in the act of hunting if it is practiced with care. Bob Honey knew this when he realized that humans are animals too. We should all be thoughtful and deliberate in the act of hunting, for we can easily become the hunted ourselves. I had no idea that's what that first one was saying.
Was Bob Honey in the original? Did they even say Bob Honey?
Yeah, it's main character.
That's how crazy that was, that I'd never even heard Bob Honey in all of that.
I didn't either.
Well, the narrator is speaking, and he says, there is a pride to be had where the prejudicial is practiced with precision. So it's his opinion, it's his voice kind of coming through. And then the blog article writer who's putting this in her own words, she put the tag.
Oh, okay.
But
I feel like that guy I wouldn't want to hang out
I didn't realize that's what that was all describing. So
right.
Yeah. So that's one big problem with Purple Prose. If it's confusing your reader, if your reader reads that sentence and doesn't know what you're saying, that's a good sentence that we want to highlight and kind of rework to make the meaning clear. Ellen, what do you think?
What do I think?
Yeah.
I think even the rewrite needed an editor.
Yeah. Editing.
But at least we understand what's happening now. We have somewhere to go.
I have less patience than I used to, and sometimes I feel like I'm standing and screaming into a dark tunnel, or screaming out of a dark tunnel. I don't know.
I'll scream with you. I'll bring the whiskey.
Is this going to turn into a counseling session? Because I got my counseling shoes on, which is barefoot, totally barefoot, by the way.
We're talking it out right now. Stop doing this. Just stop.
But seriously, to what what we've all been saying, if after, and Ellen knows what I'm talking about, if after 21 pages, if after 110 pages, you still have no idea what the story is about because there's just so much, I don't even know, going on, you've got to put some clarifiers in there. And the best way is to get other eyes and allow yourself to take that criticism, to let your words be words. They're just words. You can fix them and make them better. And every word you write can be made better. It's not always going to be written perfectly the first time.
Your editor is not your enemy, especially not in the indie world. Your editor is not your enemy because you're paying them. They work for you.
We want to make you better.
Yes. We don't look good if you don't look good.
The old phrase, cut your darlings, still holds all the truth there is today. As a matter of fact, I'd go as far as to say have no darlings. If you're truly putting an editor on your book, you've got to have nothing in your book that you're just married to. You're allowed to, Ellen said it, you're paying us, you're paying your editors. You could tell them no all day long if you want to. Whether or not they're going to work with you after that is another story, but you have every right to say no. So if you do have your darlings that you won't cut, that's fine, but you're doing yourself a disservice, as Larry Niven said. You're doing yourself the disservice by not listening to your editor a lot of times. One of my older books, Brother Dust, I'm rewriting it right now and re-releasing it because I realized it needed some help. It needed some work. And I had Rhett Bruno, my partner, do a dev edit on it for me. And he took one of my favorite parts of the entire book, which was a poem, a song. It was actually a psalm, if you want to look at it that way. And he said, Steve, this sounds to me like you're a songwriter who really wanted people to know that. And he said, just get rid of it. It's not helping anyone at all. And I don't like poetry, so I don't want to read this. And it hurt, man. That sucked because I put so much work into that. It was flowery, but it was supposed to be. And he said, man, just get rid of it. I'm like, those were my darlings. And I went, snip. And now they're out of the book and I'm going to miss them forever. But if the reader doesn't want it, I don't want it. You
know what you could do with them? You could put them. You could put them on a poster with the cover, and then you could use it as marketing.
That's right. It could be done for something.
There you go. No lost words.
Oh man! So it wasn't needed in the story, though.
No, it was. It could have. It could have very easily been something. Just saying that the dude was anguished. Whatever. The dude was torn up. He was just reminiscing about his old planet that was dying, and his job at this point was to save the planet. He had a purpose, he had whatever, and he was in his room playing some old instrument, and he decided to sing this kind of old psalm, old hymn about his planet, and it was very emotional, and I thought it was great, but I've learned that Rhett's usually right when it comes to story.
Yeah,
he's my editor for a reason.
Of your book.
That's right. It's exactly what it was. Yeah. And it was probably more like Santana playing one note for 35 minutes. And most people just going, when's this going to stop?
Yeah.
That's hard. But it takes a measure of humility too. That's not easy to come by.
I'm going to go cry now.
Sorry.
I should read it to you. I have it here.
When we're in Vegas in 3 weeks drinking Moscow mules at lunch, I will let you sing it to me.
Oh, hey. Beautiful.
We're doing it.
All right. Well, our next sample, this is from a book that doesn't even have the author name. It's called My Immortal. It's a fan fiction story, and I guess it's by Anonymous. My friend Bloody Mary Smith smiled at me understatedly. She flipped her long, waist-length, gothic black hair and opened her crimson eyes like blood that she was wearing contact lenses on. She had pale white skin that she was wearing white makeup on. Hermione was kidnapped when she was born. Her real parents are vampires, and one of them is a witch, but Voldemort killed her mother and her father committed suicide. because he was depressed about it.
So was that fan fiction? What was that?
That was word salad, Steve. We call that word salad.
So yeah, that is like, that's the vomit stage in my mind. You're getting all the ideas out, that whole thing about the mother and the father. I mean, that could be a whole thing beforehand or cut completely. I mean, that's just, that's a whole lot of ideas stacked into a paragraph, in my mind, at least. That's what I see.
I mean, it's just telling you, it's literally taking what should have taken, I don't know, 40,000 words to sparse through out the story.
That's what I'm saying. It's a vomit of all these different ideas that are, mashed together that really need to be split apart and then looked through, broadened.
What's awful is sorry, Lauren.
This is a good case of thinking of what does this story that I'm telling here in this book need to know. Not all the details that relate to my characters and my plot need to be compressed into this paragraph or need to be included at all. Sometimes with the Purple Prose, it's a matter of being more concise, but here it's a matter of picking what's important and just chucking the rest, because we don't need most of this.
There's another thought with somebody just talking, or was I on repeat?
I wasn't talking.
I'm sorry.
1, 2, 3. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
No, I think my microphone's doing weird things. Let me just.
Do 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 do. No, waiting for Steve.
My bad.
There he is.
With not Brother Dust, with the Buried Goddess saga. Lauren, I know you've read some of it. Sometimes we get the crap for not dumping enough information at the start of the book. There wasn't enough world building. My personal philosophy is that the world gets built through characters. If the character, I write very, very close third person or first person. And so if the characters don't know it or the characters don't see it, the reader doesn't get to hear about it. Mm-hmm. And sometimes a lot of people, there's a lot of readers that just want everything about the world. They want to know everything that's going on. And so going back to where we were before, there are different trains of philosophy on this, if we could say it that way. I don't even know if that makes sense. But
I agree. Run with it.
So I guess it's really hard to say here's the way to do it, here's not the way to do it. Chris Paolini, or however you say his name, like clearly he made a lot of money off of those books. I probably would have read that if that was a submission and went next. And I would have lost a lot of money.
And we circle right back to where we started, in that everything's not hard and fast, but everything is subjective. Sometimes things work when you don't know why, and sometimes things that should work don't work. So, but for the most part, don't bury your reader in squidgy language and sloppy analogies and similes from hell, or just don't do that to your reader. I'm assuming you want people to read it, because that's not the way to get people to read it.
I mean, if it gets to the point when you're like, here, reader, let me take your hand and bring you on this journey, they're not in the story. They're being walked through the story.
Right.
Once it gets to the point of every twist, turn, color, shade, sniff, growl, blink, what have you, wind whispering.
You know what an avocado looks like, Steve.
I'll tell you another thing. We recently passed on a book that went on to be a bestseller. I mean, it blew up. It killed. And I sat there going, that was one of the worst submissions I had received. I read the published version and it didn't change. Like at first I thought, man, they must have gotten a great editor. And I checked it and it was the same submission that I got. And it was an easy pass for me. I mean, I'm laying there going, nope, next. And then, a month and a half later, I see it on Amazon way up in the charts, and it stayed there for 3-4 months. And I went, well, you can't predict some of this stuff.
But for your publishing company, just as us as readers, just as us as authors, that wasn't your jam.
Right.
Like it wasn't your audience. And your audience best. Yeah, it blew up, but it blew up for the right audience, which was.
So did Twilight.
Exactly. Twilight, 50 Shades.
So did 800-year-old man going after 16-year-old girl. Yeah, I think that's called Twilight, right?
Yeah.
How old was he?
Oh, I don't know.
Creepiest story ever.
The first one really wasn't bad. It wasn't, but after that, it just.
But it was first person present tense, right? If I'm not mistaken. And so was Hunger Games.
I didn't care for Hunger Games either.
And Legionnaire, Galaxy's Edge, the first one was first person present tense. And man, it takes some getting into that. It takes some getting used to it. It's hard to write too. But apparently it's worked.
So if we're thinking about tips for finding and cutting purple prose in our writing, it sounds like the big one is to think about the reader experience.
That's where you should start from.
That's where we should start from. Does the reader understand what that sentence is saying, what it means?
And would the reader care if he did?
And also, I want to add, I've been seeing this a lot, where you have described something, right? And it's like, got that in my head, solid. And then the next sentence or, a couple sentences down, it's like, wait, didn't you already describe that? But you've done it in a slightly different way. Pick one way, move on. As soon as you feel yourself describing that one thing again, slap your hand, find something else, don't do it.
Yesterday, I wrote an edit that included the words, drop a bowling ball on your foot. What else did I say? God, I told you guys about it. What did I say?
Is this one of your comments?
Something, drop a bowling ball on your foot, do something else extremely painful. And I said, it's called aversion therapy. So, yeah. Sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt.
Ellen's comments are epic. They are.
So instead of being redundant, like snap your wrist instead of repeating yourself over and over again.
And it's like, you describe the door, right? Let's say the door is really important because it has ancient scroll writing on it, and they need to know what the scroll writing is all about.
You just did it.
But that's about the scroll.
Exactly, right? I just repeated myself twice. There's a door with scroll writing on it. And then like 2 sentences later, they're staring at the door with scroll writing. The door with scroll writing, even in your dialogue, just try really hard not to repeat excessively, I should say. It's an easy way to bog down your writing without realizing that you're bogging down your writing, especially when you're describing it in a different way, because there's 1.5 million infinity ways to describe a piece of wood, and you can do that really easily in a single paragraph, in a single totally forgot the word, chapter. But see it in your mind, hear it in the words, if you're like, okay, this is the wood, did that, page 1, move on. Unless it's changed, I guess.
The Reedsy blog also makes the point that you ought to not copy other people's writing styles. Find your own voice, and maybe you need a free write to find it, but find your own voice, try to be yourself. Even if you're writing in a genre that is new to you, try not to imitate other people, because in getting in that trap, we might fall into purple prose without realizing it. What do you think of that?
It's easy to do purple prose, but Steve is right. It boils down to, I don't know what to say next. So, hey, look, a chicken.
If we're asking about that particular statement on Reedsy, so when I started music, everybody told me that I was trying to sound like Scott Stapp from Creed. I didn't hear that until I stopped doing it. And now I listen to my old teenage stuff and I go, what is that stupid voice that you're doing? When I started writing seriously, I was having some trouble in a couple of areas writing. And I specifically took a short story that was a very well-selling short story. And I took exactly what I plagiarized it. It was never released, so don't worry. But like I took exactly what was written and I wrote it in a different setting with a different character doing a different thing. And I tried to figure out the process in which that short story worked. Don't ever publish that thing that you do, but that really worked for me as an exercise, just to try to see what was actually happening in that writing process to get from point A to point B. And it was a tremendous help of an exercise. Stephen King tells of exercises similar to that on writing. I don't know if I'd agree with that, because every writer's got to have a different journey that they take. And as long as you're honest with yourself about, what you're doing that's shady and what you're doing that's not, if that gets thrown away, that gets thrown away. It's practice.
Yeah.
Don't.
I would
a lot
add
of people
to that,
publish their practice. Don't publish your practice.
I would add to that understand, no matter how good you are or how long you've been doing this, you are not and will never be objective about your own work.
Right.
You can't see it clearly because it's yours. You may have a great take on it. You may be most of the time spot on and know what you're doing and have everything down, but you are not objective about your own work. So always keep that in mind.
Yeah.
Okay.
I've heard people say, well, I write better than so-and-so. And you're thinking, yeah, no, you don't.
Well, how many times have you edited a paragraph where somebody used the same word 3 or 4 times in one paragraph?
Today or in general?
Yeah, in general. I mean, like we see it all the time, right? And then when you comment, because I always comment on those, I can't let them go. I want the person to realize.
I make a list.
Yeah, exactly. You've said the
I
same
deleted
word.
this because
and almost every time, every book that I edit, the author always comes back to me and goes, "I didn't even see that." Well, it's because we don't see it, because we know what we're trying to say, and we don't realize that we just put out a bunch of garbage. We know what we wanted to say.
Yeah, you know what it meant, so that's what you said.
Right.
That's what you said.
which is why no matter how you get extra eyes on your work, that's why it's really important. Because you don't see what you can't see, because you know what you think you already know.
Ellen, do you have that clause in your contract that says I'm only responsible for a finite amount of your potentially infinite mistakes? I love that. I love it.
Yeah, no, I don't.
You should.
That sounds like an Ellen thing. That's glorious. You're amazing, Ellen. Just so you know.
Jeez, thanks. I'm not really. Okay, maybe no. I'm just kidding.
Fine, you're not.
I'm not.
Fine.
It's yours. Oh.
They also say, here's another tip. Focus on the substance. When you're looking at a sentence and you're deciding, is it purpley or what? What's going on in this chapter? What's going on in this scene? Where am I trying to go with the scene? What's the point here? And does this sentence contribute to it? If not, it's eligible for cutting. Or maybe just go ahead and cut it.
Does it advance the story? Does it deepen the character? Or is it funny or amusing in some way on its own? If it's none of those things, get rid of it.
Yeah, I will say, I'm going through one particular edit now, and it's the second round, but I deleted an entire sentence out of one part of that second round, because it was basically just describing, the clothing and the walking. Don't stop it. We don't need to know that anymore. We need to know what is happening between them, not what her clothing looks like, sort of a thing. So, yeah, exactly that. If it's not adding, it's just sort of, if it's reminding, hey, don't forget about, that's kind of like almost telling your reader that they're not smart enough to remember that, the person was an elf or whatever, or the person was short or, chubby or whatever have you.
No recaps. This isn't trash TV. We are not watching the real Knights of Beverly Hills or whatever, you know.
It's a good
You
show.
don't have to recap every time. You don't recap every time you come back from a break, or you know, every time you open a sentence, or every
Previously
time you
on Lost.
5 minutes ago, they found
Good.
peanut butter.
What about peanut butter? Somebody say peanut butter?
I did.
I just had peanut butter a little while ago, so
It's delicious.
I have all my peanut butter I need.
She also says, for another tip for Purple Prose, use your thesaurus sparingly. You don't need to whip out that thesaurus and keep on adding on extra words.
Yes. It's not to add extra words, it's to keep you from writing stepped 46 times.
Right. Or now here's one point that she brought up. Dialogue tags. She made the point that some authors like to substitute a word for said every chance they get.
Oh gosh. Yeah, no.
I think there's some division on this. There are other authors who are like, just use said. You don't really need asked or replied or answered, even ask, you know, just said.
Well, for me, there's a difference between said. If it's a question, asked is fine. If it's in response to somebody, response or reply is like he replied, he responded, totally fine. But when every other one is he said, he growled, he bellowed, he shrieked, he cried, he choked. I mean, when every other one is some word that's trying to tell me how your character feels, that's telling me you're not writing your character well enough. I don't need to know how he said it if I know what's going on in the story.
Yeah, if we're already there, then the reader's already imagining, you know, I told you this already. He growled with great guffaw from his lungs, you know.
Okay.
You know.
So, but see, and Kayleen just did it. If you're married to your non-standard tags and you love non-standard dialogue tags, okay, that's fine. I work for you. Make sure your non-standard tag fits what's going on, because you don't growl a guffaw, Kayleen.
I did it on purpose.
Thank you,
Joe.
You set me up. It was great.
You can, but I mean, like Torsten in my books, Torsten growls.
A guffaw?
He bellows occasionally. That is who
he growls a guffaw.
No, he doesn't growl like a guffaw.
Okay.
Could you imagine growling a guffaw?
But stick to it with your character. If that is who your character is, that's a whole lot different than I just don't know what to say, so I'm going to say it. Torsten's a growler. He just is. That's how he talks. And that's okay, but don't do it every single time.
I would say that most people could delete 45 to 65% of their dialogue tags, period.
So I think you and I talked about this recently. The only reason I disagree now is because of how big audio is. And if you listen to any audiobook without dialogue tags, you're lost.
And I didn't say no dialogue tags.
Right.
I said you could eliminate a bunch of them.
Right.
You don't need a dialogue tag after every sentence, and you don't need an action beat breaking up your first sentence every time either.
I agree with that too.
Yeah. I had a thing. Now it's, I don't know. It's in there somewhere. Someone talk.
Do you remember, Kaylee? Lauren, you just talked about thesauruses. Do we have any Friends fans? Like the TV show Friends?
Yes.
You remember? I pulled up the script. Do you remember the line where Joey says he wrote that adoption letter, and the line was, "Oh, they're warm, nice people with big hearts," and Chandler said, "And that became their humid, prepossessing Homo sapiens with full-size aortic pumps."
Yes, there's your Purple Prose.
That's the Purple Prose. Source for every word.
Sometimes simple is better.
Most times. It's got to be clear. It's got to be understandable, and it's got to not be boring. Ultimately, and nothing's going to bore me more than reading your description of Aunt Jenny's drapes for 45 words.
Don't shrug your shoulders. Don't blink your eyes. Don't nod your head. Don't kick your foot. Don't wave your hand. I mean, if there's only one part of your body that could do a specific thing, you are adding to your Purple Prose every time you tell us what part of your body's doing that.
Yeah, he waved.
That's it.
He waved his right hand. I don't. What else? What else? Is he gonna wave his foot?
He waved his right hand
I mean,
exuberantly. Don't forget exuberantly.
But what if he wanted to pause and hesitate before turning to stare at the door, then standing and walking out and shutting the door behind him as he exits?
God, that's a lot of words to say he left the room.
which reverberated down the
You
hallway.
have to say the room.
As
Far as I'm concerned, the room is Purple Prose. He left. Get out.
That's funny.
All right, well, that's all the brilliant wisdom I had planned for tonight. Any more brilliant wisdom from you guys?
All right. Ellen, do you have any remaining things that you just got to stick in there to let our writerly people know?
I almost cried when you started talking because I felt like I was hearing myself. I was hearing somebody else in my tunnel, screaming with me.
I scream with you.
What I think, and because I get to where I'm like, am I unreasonable? Are my expectations too high? Am I wrong? And then to hear you come in and say, oh yeah, don't do this. You can't do that. And this is ridiculous. It's like, So thank you for that.
As an editor, I'm like, oh, this author is going to be like, I'm picking on them so hard, but I'm not picking on you. I'm really just trying to make your words the best they can be. And sometimes that means cutting some stuff and flipping some things.
Can we leave? There's a lot of authors here that I want to tell you, like, we're not going to be mad at you or judge you because you give us a piece of work like this. We just want you to, if you're with us long enough, we want you to grow with us instead of constantly making us do the same thing in your work. Mm-hmm. Especially if it's a first time. If we're getting your work for the first time, or like if you, I know a lot of people who have submitted to Athon watch this. Like if you don't think like, oh great, Steve's gonna hate everything that I wrote because of this. That's not what it is. My job is to go through and go, this doesn't need to be there. This doesn't need to be there. This doesn't need to be there. This is what should be there. And that's totally fine. If that happens on the 5th book that we work on together, then you're probably going to get some crap from me.
Can you hear me now? No.
Josh knows.
Because he done did. Got them, they're gone.
Josh is a phenomenal writer. He's a great writer. He just needs the reminder. He's a great storyteller. He needs the reminder, and he's probably in the chat room right now. He needs the reminder that people do more than move.
Yes, really they do.
It's okay. But then I was talking to him the other day, and I'm like, but I don't know what they do other than move. Because like I'll look through it, I go, I don't know how to change this either. Just get rid of move. Figure this out. I don't want to do it 144 times, so figure it out. It's cool.
Give me some, find the deepness within yourself. What else can we do here? What other perspective? He walked across the desert landscape. Okay. Is there something else that's happening that could, if you must describe the fact that he's walking across the desert landscape, what's another perspective that you can put in there?
I'd rather just hear that the desert was hot and sand whipped him in the face as he walked.
It took him 2 weeks to get across the desert. How about that?
Yeah, I mean, I'd so much rather.
The desert wind whipped him in the face.
Done.
We can imagine he's walking.
From that point forward in the chapter, I know that he's in the desert. Until he leaves the desert, stop telling me about the desert.
Exactly.
Alrighty. Well, I've had a lot of fun. Thank you both. Oh my gosh, these screens. Thank you both for being here.
You're here.
Yeah, you can catch Steve over at Athon. You can catch him in Keystroke Medium. Is there anywhere else, our viewers, listeners, since you haven't been here in a while, Steve, where can our people find you?
JudgyMcJudgeBeard.com. I think no, I should get that. Well, I'm also Jamie Castle, so you can go to jamiecastle.com or I don't know, Facebook. I'm not.
He likes to argue with himself. It's hilarious.
I do. Jamie and Steve argue a lot on Facebook. So.
All right, and Ellen, I understand you have a fabulous new place people can discover you at.
I do. I have a fabulous new place.
Yeah.
Night, EllenCampbellEdits.com. You can also get there via dammitboard.com. And you can find me on Facebook Medium or on Keystroke Medium. Oh my God, you guys, it is so far past my bedtime.
Facebook Medium.
And
That's
I've
awesome.
been getting up at midnight every day this week.
She's turning into a day walker, you guys.
I really am. And I'm doing it for you. So that your books will be good.
Because
Appreciate
there
it.
are no safe words.
No
That's
safe-
what she
Oh.
does for you.
Yeah. Yeah, I have shirts too. They're cool.
Yes, they are. This is one of them. I'm just going to promote right now. Ellen's delightful. Oh my God. Okay, now I have to stand up. Okay, here we go. Right, there
And
we go.
guess who designed my logo?
Who did that wonderful logo?
It was
Who
Steve.
Who did the logo on Ellen's shirt and the one on my shirt and the one on Lauren's shirt? Who did all these logos? Oh, I didn't do that one. I didn't do
man, I'm going
No,
out.
I think Josh did
I'm
that
sorry,
one.
Josh. I'm sorry. Hey, at least I didn't Keystone Medium.
I've done that.
Yeah.
I've done that.
Alrighty. Oh my gosh. So this has been so much fun. I wish it could last longer. We'll have to get together again and do another one of these,
Yeah.
and just hash it
Vegas
out.
2019.
Yeah, Vegas is coming up soon. We're gonna do our things,
Time to get
all
up.
that, and hopefully, I know Lauren is trying to figure out how to do some live Vegas show things, either interviews with people or us just hanging out, chatting, what have you. Something will happen. Something will be here. And we hope to see you next week, where we're going to talk about some reading, writing, and everything in between right here on Keystroke Mediums, The Writer's Journey. Good night, you guys.
Night.